Hi everyone, this is Balazs from RacingBrick. Last year we got this huge Technic BMW M1000RR with a bunch of new parts for a large-scale motorcycle. At that time I wasn't sure if LEGO really made those massive new wheels and other pieces exclusively just for this set, but apparently they didn't. This year we got our next 1/5 scale motorcycle. This is the Yamaha MT-10 SP. I'm sure Yamaha fans are celebrating right now, but will this bike be different enough from the BMW to convince all Technic fans? Does it have something new to offer? Let's find it out. We see the motorcycle on the front of the box with the usual black background of the 18 plus sets and a bunch of different logos. One of them is perhaps a bit unusual, as the AR app is back after the Mars rover to add something extra to the experience. I really like this trend. Here's another view of the set on the back of the box. You can see the dimensions and we have a surprising number of photos with the real bike on the side. Let's open the box. Hello, this is Balazs from the future. Compared to the recording of the original video. As you may have noticed, the unveiling of this set didn't quite go according to plan. The reviews were pushed back in the last few minutes, so you may have already seen some details about the set last week. In the meantime, the official product page with all the data has been released as well. The set has 1478 pieces, it will be released on the 1st of August, and the price is €230 or $240. You can find all other regional prices at the link above or in the description. We get 12 numbered bags with 6 building phases, 1 unnumbered bag with the rims and the shock absorbers, 2 large tires and an envelope. This one is glued this time and doesn't have the usual tapes to cut. We get a rather small sticker sheet, and here is the manual with the new plain white design and a close-up of the motorcycle. Here we get an introduction about Yamaha, the model itself and the hyper naked category. Then comes a few words from the designer. Apparently there are a lot of motorcycle enthusiasts in the Technic team. Here's an ad for the AR app without much detail, then some features of the real bike, a few detail shots of the LEGO version, an interesting look at the main modules, and another montage with the two versions. Here's the part list with some really exciting details you will see soon. Now let's start building. This is how the process begins. I'm not quite sure which part this is yet. An unexpected appearance of the orange rubber inserts. I last saw them in the Optimus Prime set. Things are getting bigger and more complicated, and there are also more and more tricky angles. I'm extending the frame forward and some connections are more challenging than the others. We have reached the end of phase 1 and have a fairly complex 3-dimensional build with lots of angles. In phase 2 we start with a new construction. This is the second time we see the pearl gold chain links in a set after the BMW motorcycle. And brand new parts for the gearbox. In 2018, the orange wave selector piece was introduced in the Bugatti Chiron, which brought a change in the LEGO gearbox world, and apparently after 5 years we see another evolutionary step. There's a new driving ring piece, an interesting orange claw part that presumably connects to the driving ring, the blue part that resembles the wave selector but is kind of inverted and has letters from A to H, and this new yellow gear piece. Judging by the letters, the wave selector has 8 positions instead of the previous 4, which means we can have way more gear options in a smaller package. It's best to start building the gearbox right away to see how these cool new parts will work. Oh, and in addition to these parts, we also get a brand new 24-tooth clutch gear. So here is the gearbox assembly so far, nothing out of the ordinary except for the new driving ring. Now comes the orange part, it slides freely on the cross axles. Then comes the new wave selector, it must be in a specific position according to the manual, the letters help with that. Then comes the new yellow gear, the other wave selector in a different position, and another yellow gear. This is how they push the orange parts around. Yet another verification step to see that everything is in the right position, but I really don't mind. And since I've been concentrating so much on the blue parts, I've done something wrong. The orange parts have to have the same orientation, need to rotate this one. It's time to connect the two assemblies. We need to make sure that the grey driving rings and the orange claw parts are in the same position, and that's how our gearbox will work. Another unusually tricky assembly with this rubber band, it goes in there, a few more parts and now it's time to test the gearbox. There are still a lot of gears missing, so you can't see all the functions, and the QR code in the manual doesn't work yet, but the position of that piece on the side with the red toggle should indicate what gear we are in. So that's first, neutral, second, and third gear. But what will make it stop in these positions? It's a bit tricky and more parts are needed later, but I will try to show that. There's a stepper mechanism in the back with all the rubber bands trying to push that new yellow gear, but it doesn't seem to work in this form. The trick is this other beam that should push the other yellow gear down, and then suddenly shifting will work. As you can see, the mechanism turns only 45 degrees at a time instead of 90 degrees like the old system. Now it's time to add more parts. Here's the assembly with the pistons, but it's not connected to the gearbox yet. I've added the necessary gears now. You can see that the chain drive and the pistons are now connected. We can look at the gearbox again. This is first gear, then neutral. This is second gear. And then third. I'm very happy to see a realistic gearbox and engine again after the 2-speed ATV, as the engine runs slower in the higher gears at constant wheel speed. Here comes a rather large system assembly that covers most of the gearbox, so the interesting features are unfortunately hidden. This set will certainly have many angled assemblies. This is one of them. It's time to put the two main builds together. This is a bit tricky, but again we have help in the instructions, but take your time to find the right position. It's attached with a few pieces here and there, and then comes the trick with the stepper mechanism. This shock absorber pushes down the red beam on the yellow gear to make it work properly. The installation isn't that easy, but after that we can test the shifting again. The manual only shows its position and the corresponding gear. I really hope that the part on the side is just the indicator and there is a more convenient way to shift. Phase 4 starts with the stand. This time we have a smaller plug with an interesting part that I don't think I've ever seen before. So the stand is assembled and from now on we can continue to build a bike on it. Here is the rear wheel. These are the same tires and rims as in the BMW set, only the color of the rim has been changed. Here is the swing arm on one side, again quite similar to the BMW. The same shock absorber was used, but the color of the fake spring was changed to yellow. Time to mount the assembly. I pushed that axle in before, that was a mistake. This is not so easy to do on the stand. Don't forget to put the chain around the gear. It's better to do this on a flat surface as the position of the chain is critical. Once the chain is routed properly, we can fix the whole assembly. Here is the other side of the swing arm, then the small mudguard piece. And then comes the magic moment of truth. We do have a proper shifter, even though for some reason it's not highlighted in the instructions. With the shifter built in, it's now super easy and convenient to shift between gears, and the part on the other side actually just serves as an indicator. Very cool. Bag 5 starts with these massive shock absorbers, the same as on the BMW, but this time in pearl gold. Here is the front wheel, it also has the corresponding wheel hubs. The front mudguard takes advantage of these recently introduced panel fairings. I can't say unfortunately that it is a perfect match, the upper section is way too wide. Some system parts with stickers for the top of the fuel tank. Now here is the assembly with the handlebars, which uses a whole bunch of interesting parts and connections. This is an innovative part used for the headlights. We have a transparent minifig headpiece and a tile connected to a cross axle with stop. The whole thing is pushed into a black barrel, and this is the end result. Here is another novelty of the set, transparent small panel fairings. They are used for the windshield, but what I really don't understand is the use of the red 2-module long cross axle there. They also come in black and it's an 18+ license set. I think it would have been much better to use those. I'm starting the final phase, adding details to the rear, and here are some unusual parts that I last saw on buildable Star Wars figures. The seat is really taking shape now, then comes the brake pedal and a rather tricky way to route that long flexible part. Here's the exhaust and the last elements of the paneling, including this one that almost completely covers the gear indicator. I don't really like this solution. But anyway, here is the finished model. I think it looks great. I like the color scheme and the overall look. The proportions are very similar to the BMW, but due to the shared main components, this is understandable, but it has much less paneling. After all, it's a naked bike. As for authenticity, I think the designer did a good job. Perhaps the paneling around the engine and the engine itself could have been a bit more detailed. The representation with this single part is a bit rudimentary. This is clearly not a playset, but there are some features for you to try. We have functional front and rear suspension, working steering, and of course the fake inline 4-cylinder engine and the gearbox inside. Too bad you can't see much of it at the end, except for that red axle spinning around. I was hoping that on a naked bike you could see a little more of the innards. Shifting works reliably, but even the gear indicator is hidden and only visible from a very specific angle. The most visible effect is the speed at which this axle end rotates in the various gears. The bike can be displayed on this stand, it can be placed in both directions and also has a functional kickstand. And don't forget the app. I only have a beta version on my old iPad that isn't even compatible on paper, so don't judge the performance by that, just want to share the concept with you. We can get a lot of information about the different components of the real bike, which is great. I love it when the app is used to share more data and interesting facts. There is another cool and informative section where we can see the gearbox in action. This helps a bit as we don't have access to the functional parts after building the model. There are also other AR features in the app that I haven't had a chance to test at the moment, but I'm really glad to see these features. Finally, LEGO has started using AR the way I always wanted. So, let's sum it up. I wasn't sure at first if this set was different enough from the BMW to be interesting, but I think it did a pretty good job. We have very exciting new gearbox pieces to begin with. I'm sure we will see these parts in other sets as well, especially the 1/8 scale supercar expected for next year. I prefer the look of this model over the older one, might be simply due to the model choice, but I think that the new generation of panel fairings help the model a lot to look more refined. There are a few inaccuracies here and there, and I would like to be able to see more of the mechanics inside, even by making some cover elements easily removable. The app helps a bit with that, and I really like the amount of information we can get there. So, chiming in again as my future self. We now know the official price. It's a little lower than the BMW's recommended retail price, because that one is €250 or dollars. The difference is understandable since the Yamaha has a little less parts, but given the interesting new gearbox pieces and the overall look, this is subjective, I think I would prefer the Yamaha if we compare these two. But both are still pretty expensive compared to other Technic sets when you compare the number of parts or even the weight, so they seem to have their own new category now. Fortunately, the BMW is available at a 30% discount these days at different retailers, which makes it a bit more acceptable, so you can expect the same to be true for the Yamaha in a few months. I know this is still too much for some of you, because the Batcycle is already available for like €40, the Ducati for €50, so €160 for the Yamaha would still be a lot more, but I think we can agree that for this price they have a very different scale. Please let me know your thoughts, folks, in the comments section. If you like this video, then please give it a thumbs up, and don't forget to subscribe with notifications, as more exciting LEGO videos are coming soon. See you next time, bye bye.